when you're looking at somebody, before you label them as a narcissist or diagnose them, ask yourself, am I a clinician?
Welcome to Happy Hour, where we're flipping the script on the traditional happy hour. Instead of winding down with the drink, we're here to talk about what actually makes us happy and learn from society's healers, therapists, coaches, elders, spiritual leaders, and everyone in between. Join us as we dive into stories, insights, and tools that help us grow, heal, and support one another. Whether you're a seeker or a seer, this is for you. I'm Anurag, founder of Happy, and this series will be hosted by myself, along with my co-hosts, Mira and Tess, and we're excited to explore new ways to bring more joy and well-being into our lives. So take a deep breath, and let's dig in. Hi there, this is Anurag, founder CEO of HPY. I'm so excited to share my conversation with Madlen Pashinian, the founder of Vendel Therapy. We have an amazing conversation and talk about a wide range of topics, from relationships to domestic violence and abuse, to most importantly, narcissism. Narcissism in recent time has been such a hot topic, and Madlen demystifies exactly what it means to be in a relationship with the narcissist, and perhaps what are some of the factors that lead to the development of narcissistic behaviors in children. Enjoy the conversation, and again, thank you for listening. Madlen, welcome to Happy Hour.
Hi.
Thank you so much for driving down today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about yourself, your practice, and what's your jam?
Sure. So I'm an LMFT, and I primarily see couples and individuals struggling with all kinds of things in my practice. I've worked in addiction for a little bit over a decade now with Sanctuary Treatment Center in Encino, California, where we treat adults struggling with co-occurring disorders and addiction. So we have a detox residential, PHP outpatient, the whole ball game. So a little bit of everything.
Okay.
I'm also a professor, an adjunct professor at Pepperdine, where I teach clinical skills to upcoming clinicians, which I love. I love being a professor. I love helping all kinds of people, but also helping upcoming healers to really grow and find that light that they have to help treat others who don't have it.
Yeah.
So
I love that. My God, I remember when we first talked, I was like, how can one individual do so many things? And yet I asked this poignant question to distill it down in 1 minute. Mm-hmm. But why? Why did you do all this work? Where do you think it started?
Oh, well, I think I was always a clinician. I think as far as I can remember back when I was maybe 4, studying people's behaviors and kind of how they communicated and listening to, movements, studying body language. I always wanted to know why people did what they did.
Yeah.
And how they did what they did. And I was always a thinker, so problem solver. And I think that kind of really bloomed into who I am today. And of course, doing my own work as a clinician and my own therapy, going back, I'm 40 now, so going back 38 years or 35 years and really rediscovering my past and my parts, kind of like what I talked to you about earlier.
Yeah.
And, working through my own familial narcissism. My mother is a covert narcissist.
Yeah.
So.
And sorry, what's a covert narcissist?
A covert narcissist is somebody who is a narcissist, but under the covers. So these are the ones that really use manipulation in a very soft way. So it's not like the outbursts. It's not the, I'm the most important person in the world. I'm, look at me, everybody look at me. It's a very soft tone of manipulation and gaslighting and implementing shame and guilt to really get what they need and what they want. So it's very common. So that's why when you said we label everybody a narcissist, I'm like, not really.
Yeah.
Not really.
It's interesting because I feel like there is this element of, in modern times, it feels like we live in this sort of world of labels, right? And everyone's been like, oh my God, I'm so afraid to be labeled this or labeled that. And even some strange thing I heard in some certain circles now, having high-functioning autism is like bragged about, or people like, no, I'm a high-functioning autistic person, which is like such a misuse of labels and diagnosis, right? But how do you think about it? Obviously, it sounds like a lot of these disorders, or even say narcissism, for example, it all exists on a spectrum.
Correct.
Within like a biosocial context. So like, how does someone think about that? Like in one context, someone could be not a narcissist, but in another context, they are certainly meet the diagnosis and criteria of a narcissist. If we could re-educate people, whoever's watching this, what should they know about narcissism and what it truly is?
Narcissism is not linear. So you can have symptoms of narcissism, you can have traits of narcissism, but you don't necessarily have to have every single box checked. I think when you're looking at somebody, and before you label them as a narcissist or diagnose them, ask yourself, am I a clinician? Right? Where did I get my training? Because if it's online, great. I think that's beautiful that people are actually going out and reading and understanding and wanting to know and learn. And then my next question to them would be, how does this change your life now that you know this information? What is it that you will do now? And what is the purpose of you knowing? So, because if the purpose of you knowing is to label and blame the person for who they are,
right?
What does that say about you? And what will you do now? Right? So let's say if this were you and I was looking at, he's a narcissist.
Yeah.
Great. Right?
Yeah.
What does that do for me? What am I going to do with that now? Does that give me some kind of satisfaction? Does that give me the opportunity to blame and shift blame to you?
Right.
Or does that shift the focus back onto me and say, okay, now that I know this information, now I have a choice. What am I going to do with that? Am I going to stay in this relationship? Am I going to move away? Or am I going to expect you to change so I can feel better? Again, it's very easy to look at someone and label them, oh, you're a narcissist because I feel this way.
Why is that happening so much in the world today?
That's a magical question I wish I knew the answer to. I can only predict that we're so focused on how other people make us feel instead of really turning it around and asking ourselves, why do I feel this way?
Yeah.
Because in reality, nobody can make you feel any way you don't want to. The emotions are yours. The feelings are yours. It is your responsibility to work through it.
Yeah.
It is your responsibility to manage it. And it's also your responsibility to make a choice. You either continue the relationship with somebody,
Totally.
you minimize contact, set boundaries, or you completely cut off. And a lot of people are uncomfortable with that idea. They're uncomfortable with, I don't want to do this because it's going to upset them.
Yeah.
I don't want somebody to view me as mean. I don't want someone else to do X, Y, and Z. Well, how about you?
Yeah.
You can't expect somebody to change just so you can feel better.
Totally.
That is not conducive, right? So
It's like you're cheating yourself.
You're cheating yourself, but you're also not taking accountability for your own stuff.
Yeah.
And it's easy to do that because we rather look at someone else's flaws, right? We rather look at someone else's day-to-day practice versus ask ourselves, why am I feeling this way? It's similar with, I don't know, I think you said you have children, right?
Yeah.
So when my son does something, right, and I'm just like, stop it, right? Or when I'm really, really worried about him, and like, let's say he goes to school or he goes on a play date, and I'm just sitting there anxiously, what I really want to do is say, no, don't go, come sit, let me just lock you up here really nice so you're forever safe.
Yeah.
Right? But that doesn't work.
Yeah.
That is going to hinder his growth.
Absolutely.
And as an adult, I have to manage my own anxieties about that instead of restricting his life.
Yep.
So it's the same thing.
It's interesting where it's like, in general, modern society, is missing this essential mechanism for self-inquiry and self-awareness. And it's just a society of continual projection. And even in our media.
Yes.
Like, that is the cultural norm today, to just project versus actually introspect. I heard this quote the other day. Have you heard of this? Jainism is like an Eastern religion, an offshoot of Hinduism. And their entire principle is based on nonviolence, down to, really hardcore vegetarians, obviously no animal products, things like that. But it all inherently deals with this principle of nonviolence. And the founder of it had this really interesting quote where he said, even the act of letting your presence known to somebody else is an act of violence. Where it almost sounds like the ultimate form of that self-awareness is truly being just in the observational state, where life is happening, but you're watching it. And is all about your reaction, how you feel about everything else that's going on around you. And it sounds like that's probably what the world needs more than, hey, you're a narcissist.
Self-reflection. Right. I think that's what you're trying to say. Self-reflection, really accountability. And I agree with that, because it's so much easier to blame than to look at yourself and ask yourself, but I also have a choice.
Yeah.
It takes a very long time for somebody to actually make a change, because at first you have to recognize something's wrong. Something's not working for me. Okay, now I know something's not working for me. So now what am I going to do now?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. What can I adjust around me? Because it's very uncomfortable for me to change my routine, to change my thoughts, to change my emotions, to change my environment. So let me just try everything else first and then see how it works. And then if it doesn't, I'm going to blame. And then the easiest way I could describe this is that think about a time, let's say, that you wanted to make a change in your life. It could be big, it could be small.
Yeah.
Right? It could be, I always bring up this example to my students. Let's say, I want to lose X amount of weight. And I'm addicted to hot Cheetos, which is the truth. I love hot Cheetos.
I'm right there with you on that one.
And
Have you done with chopsticks?
No, I like the little things on my fingers.
Oh, you do? Wow. Okay. You're one of those.
Old school.
Okay.
And I want to make this change, but then I have to go through all of these steps, right? Okay, I have to go to the gym X amount of times. I have to stop eating hot Cheetos, unfortunately, every day. So I have the thought, but the actual change of it, me doing the act and then falling back into the old patterns is so common, right? Because change is hard.
Totally.
And that's the same thing that I see on the spectrum of mental health or couples or just individuals, is that I've recognized something's wrong. I want it to change. What are you willing to do then?
Yeah.
I'm willing to blame everybody else.
It's so relatable because I feel like we've all been there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the way I approach, I think, that I've started to approach things in my own personal life and just trying to teach clients and trying to teach my clinicians is, let's take the word blame and guilt and take it out of our vocabulary completely.
It's gone from circulation. Yeah.
Take it out.
Yeah.
What are you left with? Pure emotion. And now you took out blame, shame, and judgment. Now you have what you really need to work with. Once that piece is gone, right? Now you really have what you have to work with.
Oh, that's really cool. It's interesting. It's like it is truly about just uncovering ourselves, right? And it's. I tell my wife all the time. I was like, the greatest thing I've been able to do for my own self-awareness is choose to be together each day and navigate our differences, as well as being a parent all day, right? You obviously know this. And it's fascinating because I think you obviously do a lot of work with couples.
Yes.
And like, what is it about relationships? Like, I know, like when I used to watch my parents have a disagreement, or like, they born in India, come from a different culture. Like disagreements themselves have changed over history, right? Before, it almost felt like disagreements were more silent before. It might have been more subtle of ships passing in the night. Now it's like a lot more conflict, labeling. And so like from a clinician standpoint, have you seen even in your own practice the evolution of conflict in relationships, and are there any patterns that you're seeing that are anchored in the cultural context?
Sure. So I think that there's different forms of conflict, but it all comes back to several core symptoms or structures, right? And again, it's not just one layer. There's several layers of conflict. There's several layers of disagreements, kind of like what you were talking about. And I hate to go back to the same thing, but you take out the piece of blame and shame. You take it out, right? Because often I see couples do this. Well, I did this because you did this. And then they start doing the blame game.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm always asking.
It's almost like there's a rhythm and a pattern
Right.
that they get into.
And I'm always asking, what does that do for you when you blame? Well, I want him or her to know that they're wrong. Okay, then what? Well, if they know that they're wrong, they will change. How about you? Right? So we're putting it back. We're shifting blame. We're saying it's your fault, right? So we take out the piece, and I say, well, let's say you're married.
Yeah.
And now you're on a team, on a soccer team. And I say, you know what, I'm going to win because I'm going to score a goal in your net. Is that what marriage is for you? Well, no. Okay. So let's take out the blame piece.
Yeah.
Let's see what we're actually dealing with here. Once you take down the defenses, once you take out the blame, let's see what we're going to do here. And then, of course, everybody sees conflict. Everybody sees disagreements through their own trauma lens.
Totally.
Right? You could sit across from me and you can say, hey, honey, can you get me that water? And I could say, he's always asking me for something. Oh, my God, can't he just get up and get it himself? He just thinks and then it goes, so you got to slow it down, right? Where is this coming from? What did you really hear? Or what did you think you heard? So we have two people who are doing the blame game, scoring a goal in each other's net, and then now we have two people who are taking what the other one says, transferring through their trauma goggles. Now there's a fight.
Yeah.
Not to count with what you said, growing up and seeing your own parents and how they handle conflict. Now you have this idea of conflict is scary.
Yep.
Conflict that's not right. If you have conflict, that means you're going to break up.
Yeah.
Or you have no idea what conflict even is.
Yeah.
True conflict, healthy conflict, is actually extremely beneficial to couples, because if they can have a conversation, a heated conversation, of course, constructive one, where they come to a common understanding, then their relationship actually improves. Because now they're like, we just went through this battle.
Totally.
And now we're together and we can overcome this. It doesn't have to happen again. Oftentimes, they don't talk about it. Oh, I don't want to talk about it. I'm going to push it down, and I don't want to talk about it. I'm going to push it down. Well, that's going to come up.
Oh, totally.
That's why you have the same fight about the same thing in different words over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And you say, well, I thought we were done with this. 5 years ago, she still brings it up. He still brings it up. Yeah, because it hasn't been fully processed.
It's so interesting, and what you're saying is resonating so much, because candidly, that was me and my wife. And we struggled to actually have conversation. It was only until, at least for us, it was actually learning the tools of conversation. Right. And we found a lot of gold in the Gottman method, right?
Yes.
And it feels weird to sit there and structure a conversation. I remember her being like, dude, what? I'm an attorney. I know how to talk.
That you guys do.
Yeah.
I know.
And so it's funny because I think a lot of times It really comes down to when you drop the blame.
Yep.
You're able to externalize the problem. And one of my favorites is the us versus the problem. And when you say, look, that soccer team is going to be, we're on the same team.
Absolutely.
There's this thing that's preventing us from having communication. And literally for my wife and I, it's hilarious. We've gone down to a science where it's like, you're overloaded and tired with the kids. I'm often overloaded with work. We can both relate on the mental labor required. And so then at least we can be like, hey, it's not, you're not doing enough here, you're not doing enough here. We both are having the same problem. We just need some time to take care of ourselves.
Right.
And I think it's so interesting how, at least from our lens, and I'd love to hear from your viewpoint of what you're seeing in your practice, it just seems as a society, we are so overloaded. Like, couples should not have to fight about finding 15 minutes to just chill.
Yep.
Like, to me, that's an indicator of a broken society.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel that way?
100%. Of course. Absolutely. We're always on the go. We're always on the next thing, let's go and complete this task. Let's go and cook dinner. Let's clean. Let's pick up the kids. Let's go to this restaurant. Let's go here and there and here and there. All of these check boxes, all of these requirements of life.
Yeah.
I agree with you. We are on a go, 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 go society right now.
And kind of going through a time history like warp, right? If you look at America in the 50s, tons of issues, societal, I think the misalignment and the inequality between men and women was incredibly high. Yet in that world, a family unit could survive on one income. So there was this natural give and take of these roles and structures. And yet somehow we've landed in a world where you can't even really afford a proper life for you and your family without both parents working.
Unfortunately.
And so I guess my question for you is like, there still is this element, right, of like, I find in a lot of relationships, safety is such an important thing.
Yes.
Feeling safe to express your vulnerabilities, to share your inner world, to share your frustrations. Where is that falling apart today?
That's a deep question. I'm trying to think back to most of my couples who struggle with what you've been saying. I think that, again, it has to do with trust and safety and, like you said, the economy. It's hard. Money is hard to talk about.
Yeah.
Right? What does money mean? Status.
I love that.
What does money mean to you? What does it mean for me to borrow money from you? What does it mean for you as a man to borrow money from a woman? Right? These are conversations that need to take place between couples from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Right? And you're absolutely right. You do have to have a 2-income household to survive. I think we've lost that essence of family, of what it really means. Right? Because this is a little bit of a dark comment, but when you go to the other world, let's say, when you die, right?
Yeah.
In Armenian, we have this saying. I'm going to try to translate it in English so it doesn't sound so rigid. But when you're laying down in that coffin, dead, you're not taking your Chanel and your money with you. You're taking the memories.
Yeah.
So reevaluating what it is that you really want out of life. Is it the recognition?
Yeah.
Is it, oh, look at what I'm wearing. Look at how my kid looks. Look at my husband, my house. This is where the narcissism kind of comes in a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Or am I looking for quality of life, quality of time, quality of happiness? And it's very easy to fall back on things that are attainable by money because it's right here.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel bad. Let me go buy this diamond necklace.
Totally.
Oh, my son frustrated me, or I felt frustrated because of my son or my husband. Okay, great. You know what? I'm going to go and get my hair done, my nails done, and buy myself whatever.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. I think self-care is extremely important. So I'm not
Totally.
knocking that at all. But I think the fundamentals of what we're doing here on this earth, what do we want for ourselves?
Yeah.
Emotionally, mentally, right? That's for us to really dive deep and see what it is that we want.
I love that. And I mean, it's so true. It's funny. My wife made me write a note that I keep on my computer screen. I'm literally building a company to promote happiness. And she made me write a note that says, the second that I truly become unhappy and dissatisfied with the work, I'm not going to do it.
Right.
And I think it is ultimately, to your point, is like, I like to think about life, and if I'm reverse engineering, and this also sounds dark, so I'm right there with you, but I think it's important. We so under talk about death in society.
Yes.
Right? And we all know it's such an inevitability. And like quite literally, we call it the inherent word life.
Right.
Is like the antithesis to death,
Yep.
right? It's almost like light and dark.
Right.
Like you don't have one without the other. And if I always think about, I want to reverse engineer the last 30 minutes of my life. Who's in that room? What are they saying? What's the emotion space? Why am I in that hospital? What is the diagnosis? All those sorts of things. At least for me, I'm like, I would really like to die of natural causes. Like, I think that's with your family and loved ones around. That is, in some ways, a marker of a life well lived, right? And I think that's so under talked about in our society. And to your point, it's so commonly the financial chase. Like, let me ask you, you're a couples therapist. Like, if you were to whittle it down, maybe my intuition's wrong, but like, how much of it really is always about the money?
Not often. Not often. It's always about what they're perceiving the other person is saying and how much threat that they have to their inner self. It's very little about the actual money.
It's funny. So it almost sounds like
At the core of it.
At the core of it.
Yeah.
the couples therapeutic process is actually just a whole lot more about yourself than it is about the couples process. That's wild.
Well, if you think about it, why do you choose the person that you choose to be with?
You see something in them that validates or brings safety to a part that maybe you haven't felt before.
Okay. What happens when that goes away?
You're in couples therapy. That's so fascinating. Huh. Yeah, it's funny. Like, we see a lot of people not committing to relationships very much anymore, and I don't blame them. Yet if you orient your relationship in the right way, and you have those mediums, you have the healthy threat level. We're like, oh, she said this. Let me think about that. You like have this curiosity, or he said this. Let me think about this. It can be a real tool for like self-awareness and spiritual development.
Absolutely. And to speak on and kind of piggyback off what you were saying, absolutely, you're right, that there's many people who are avoiding relationships altogether because of fear, right? Kind of like what you said, fear of safety. And it goes back to the self-realization, the work on the self, the true, honest, emotional work on yourself. Right? It's easier to avoid and run away and blame and label.
Totally.
Right? Instead of taking a step back and saying, whoa, what is happening with me right now?
Yeah.
Completely diving in authentically, without judgment, without blame, in full love, acceptance, and process. Why do I feel like I can't be in a relationship? What is it? Is it too scary? Is it because I don't trust the person that I'm going to meet is going to fit my expectations? Is it because I believe that what I want is too much for someone else, so I have to tone it down?
Yeah.
Do I believe that I can't be myself and I have to play these games, right? So then you have to ask, where did that come from?
Yeah. It's fascinating because I think a lot of times as I think about it, like all relationships, from what I've heard, they go through chapters, right? And I think that's maybe one part that we're missing, is that embracing the struggle, embracing the difficult moments. And I think was it Young Pueblo? Someone had a quote recently that was like, the most beautiful part of a relationship is when it's just about to fall apart. And they decide to work on it and rebuild it from this like place of collapse. And I think that's that resiliency. It almost feels like in today's society, it's just doesn't exist because it's easy to distract. There's so many distractions. That's fascinating. I want to switch gears a little bit. You're a professor. What are you equipping students with today? What are the vital things that you're teaching them to go be the best clinicians out there?
I love that you asked that question. I think the most important piece for upcoming clinicians is to work on themselves with empathy. If you don't work on your own stuff, it will come out in your practice. It will come out with your clients, and then you'll be that one, or most of those clinicians who are terrible therapists. And then you'll hear, I tried therapy once, and my therapist told me X, Y, and Z, and all the other clinicians are like, what?
You're the person they're talking about on Reddit.
Absolutely. So I think I'm what I try to do, or try my best to do, is for them to understand the difference between empathy and sympathy, and take a look at themselves and ask themselves, why are you in this field? What is the purpose?
I love that.
When will you work on you to process and work through what happened? And now that you did, how can you give the light to someone else?
Oh, dude, that's so awesome. Yeah, because inherently, and this is like the crazy part, right, is like the therapists who more openly acknowledge the shit that happened to them, right? And you can tell. How are they talking about it? Are they really owning the story? Denise that you just met just so fiercely own the crazy stuff that she's been through. And it just immediately creates this feeling of like deep trust. It's like they've almost walked the pathway, and then you've sort of earned the right to sort of be a healer because you've been through it. I love that.
Yeah. And it goes back to, like I said, it goes back to putting it back on you instead of blaming the others.
Yeah.
Putting it back on you, asking yourself, what does this say about me? And what do I need? I think that's kind of what the commonality is between everything that we've talked about here.
Yeah.
Is focusing back on you without blame and shame and working through it.
It's interesting. So one of our goals at HPY is we realize this gap between the therapeutic process and that exact question of self-awareness, right? And yeah, in an ideal world, you have a difficult moment, right? And if you could somehow call your therapist, like they're going to, and they'll be like, yeah, like kind of like that one TV show, I forget the name of it, on Apple TV. But like, yeah, this is what's going on with you, give it the answer, right? But I'm curious as your thoughts of like, in a world of AI, like ostensibly, that should be easier, right? There's this thing that can understand your patterns, can understand your deficiencies, can understand all the aspects of you that maybe you don't really want to see, but in the right context, in the right moment, can bring it up. And I'm curious, like, what role will AI and technology play in the context of couples and couples therapy?
Maybe possibly reminding them the tools that they learned and kind of practicing within themselves, like at that moment, kind of like what you said was, you know, they pick up the phone and call their therapist, and the therapist kind of gives them something right away, which doesn't happen, by the way. But they can maybe pick up the phone with AI and say, we're having this disagreement right now. What can we do? Like what's an exercise that we can do right now?
Totally.
And then to decrease some of this anger just in this moment, and then kind of bookmark it for later for process.
Yeah.
So
I literally last night my wife was upset about something and I was clearly not doing a good job of empathizing.
okay.
So I straight up turned to ChatGPT. I was like, how can I empathize in this context better? And it was amazing. It would literally said the first piece of advice, and I intuitively know this, but I just had forgotten this moment where it said, shift your body energy. So as I shifted my energy, my posture shifted, I actually came to a place of safety within, and just to hear her versus a place of, oh no, we're about to have a fight. And that just immediate thing just showed me how powerful it can be to have that piece right in your hand of that piece of insight. But the piece is like, we obviously have done a lot of couples therapy and we've talked through a lot of things, so we kind of know what to talk about. So it's like, I feel like a lot of folks who are listening might be like, oh, I can use this ChatGPT. I don't need to go see a couples therapist. But I just want to be very clear that no, you need to see a couples therapist to know what are those deeper things that you need to talk about.
Right. And work through, and the tools, and, just the solid foundation of the reconnection between the two of them.
I want to hear more about your story of like what really made you want to become a therapist. And I think it's important to understand, it's clear you have so much wisdom and you have so many, you can see it. There's like, you can see you've been through some things. For those listening, what are some of those things that maybe you can help them destigmatize in their journey as a healer?
I don't know. I think I've lived many lives in this 40 years, to be quite honest with you. So I can't really signify, or I can't really just focus on one aspect that really turned me into the clinician I am today. I'm a big believer, this is going to sound funny, I'm a big believer in God, and I'm a big believer in higher power.
Totally.
And I think that everything fell into my plate at the right time, whether it was something traumatic, whether it was a big traumatic event, a little traumatic event, a small traumatic event, or even just great things that happened. And kind of going back to what I was saying earlier is like I always knew that I was going to be a therapist. I didn't know what it was back then, of course, as a child. And kind of what I shared about with my own mom, being a covert narcissist. Then I put the pieces of that together later. But
have you talked to her about it?
Oh, have you ever talked to a narcissist about them being a narcissist?
No, tell me more, actually.
Oh boy, it's just classic. Of course, of course, if I tell her she's a narcissist, I mean, she's never going to admit it. It's never anyone else's. It's everyone else's fault. It's not my fault, right? So it's funny that you say that.
I mean, there's some element of culture too. Like, there's a new comedian. Her name's Zarna Garg. I don't know if you've heard of her.
No.
She's hilarious. She's like this Indian mom comedian.
Okay.
And just shamelessly owns her life. She has a conversation with her son. He's like, Mom, you're always telling us what to do, like who to be, who to talk to. I feel like I really need to go to therapy. And she's like, no, I'm here. You don't need to go to therapy. I'm here to tell you what to do. And so in some ways, it's interesting because I almost wonder, like, does that ever cross your mind that, like, the covert narcissism that she has, yes, of course, informed by, her upbringing, her story, all that stuff. But is there, like, some culture to this too?
Possibly there could be culture. I don't necessarily like to fall back on the culture because I believe that it places blame and it takes away from what's actually happening.
Oh, that's awesome.
It provides it provides like, oh, okay, I'm gonna just ignore that. I'm gonna just excuse it just because of the culture, or just because of how someone grew up. And it kind of puts us back into that cycle, the toxic cycle of, oh, well, you know what? I can't. It's just mom, so I'm just going to have to take it.
Right.
Right. But in reality, you don't. Taking out the blame and the shame, using empathy. That doesn't mean that I'm going to be okay with it. That doesn't mean I'm going to be okay. But what it means is that that person no longer holds that power over me. So, but I've seen it in all types of cultures, not just, the Armenian culture or like any other culture. It's everywhere.
It's so fascinating because I almost wonder, like, the parental relationship is one that shapes each one of us so deeply. And even as a parent, you're a parent. Like, I always think about all the time, I can teach my kids a bunch of things, or I can just do a bunch of things differently. And how much greater of a lesson that is.
Yep.
Like, even the inherent, I tell folks, a very significant part of my building this company, of course, is an ode to all the clinicians that helped me along my journey, wanting to use AI for good and be like, this can be a force for positive. But another big part of it personally is my daughters are watching me do this. Like, literally yesterday, my daughter drew a paper with some mock-ups and design for the app, and she's like 8.
Aww.
And I was like, that's like the greatest compliment I could ever see, because I'm like, I am seeding a female leader. I'm seeding an entrepreneur. And I think that is just one of the coolest things. But talk to me a little bit about, like, the parental component of mental health. How we are raised. And how do we decipher right and wrong? Right? Because we always use this word trauma, little t trauma, big T trauma. But a lot of it is just, there's so much. It's like there's generations and generations of layering. And so how should one think about their parents?
In a form of, like, what they went through, or just kind of
the role and what shaped them, good and bad.
Sure. And I think I like that you said good and bad, because two things could always be true at the same time.
Exactly.
And one person is not all inherently bad. There's good things about them, right? So even with the narcissism or the covert narcissism, not everything is bad. You don't have to have hate or animosity or even just the resentment. But they could have been 95% bad. However, there has to be space where you forgive. And forgive doesn't mean forget, right?
Yeah.
Forgive means you have peace within yourself and acceptance. And also be able to see some positivity in that person that you might have inherited.
Yeah.
For example, one of the positive things that I probably inherited from my mom is someone that is a go-getter.
Yeah.
She's the same way.
Yeah.
Right? That doesn't excuse, like, the other horrible, ugly things, but that's something that now I can look at and say, okay, that's a positive trait that I gained, versus sitting in the resentment. Anyway, I digress. I think that parenthood, gosh, nobody really talks about how hard it is.
Totally.
And when you do, you're shamed, especially, I think, for women.
Totally.
Moms, that, we get this stigma of, well, you're a mom now. Isn't this the most beautiful thing in the world? Yes, it is the most beautiful thing in the world. And I am exhausted, right? I think we forget that two things could be true at the same time.
Totally.
And parenting is hard. You're raising a human.
That's like literally the hardest thing you'll ever build.
The hardest thing.
Yeah.
And when people are like, yeah, I get it, I have a dog. And I'm like,
you're like, that's great. Dogs don't go to school.
I was like, let me ask you something. You leave your dog at home for 5-6 hours and you go somewhere and you come back. What happens? Oh, nothing. The dog probably rips up the wall or eats, the carpet. And I'm like, if I leave my child alone for 6 hours, DCFS is going to knock on my door.
Yeah.
And I go to jail.
It's a serious responsibility.
Correct. It's another form of life.
Yeah.
So I think people forget that. And we forget to give each other some grace.
On the topic of motherhood, I think it's something that I am often in awe of my wife and just how much she does and how intentional of a parent she is. And each and every day. And it's fascinating because I do think, like you just said, unless you're a mom, you don't understand it. But when
No.
you hear the words, she's like, do you understand how when we pick her up, she literally reads her affect coming out of the gate of school to get a pulse on how her day has been, to know what right questions to ask about what's going on. And she, at the same time, maintains a intellectual suspension of all the stuff that's going on in school and sort of her inner world. And I think that is something that I almost feel like we've robbed in society in this like world where she luckily we're in a spot where she's not working. But if she were to go back to work, I can't even imagine how do you suspend all the stuff you have to do for work in addition to all this mental labor at the same time.
Yeah, it's a very, very difficult task because you have to kind of try and find the balance between who you really are.
Yeah.
In my experience, and this not might be the experience for everybody else, but my experience, my identity completely shifted because now I went from this professional person, right, educated person, to mom.
Yeah.
And it is a whole different ball game. It is a whole different shift in identity of now your priorities are different. Now your needs are different, and you're essentially mourning your old life.
Totally. Yep.
And then you're shamed for it, right? When in reality, you lived this life for 25, 20, whatever years before you
Totally.
became a parent.
Yep.
And you're just expected to be joyous and throwing parties every time about it. No. Take out the judgment. Take out the blame.
Totally.
Right? And just be. It's tough. It really is. Being a parent, I think, is a full-time job. Fully. So.
It's more than that.
Oh, yeah.
It's a two-person job.
Of course. And I've said this before. I never really fully understood it, I think, until I became a parent. And this is a little controversial, so I don't think a lot of people are going to agree with it, but I kind of don't care. Having a child is the most selfless thing a person can do. Why do I say selfless? Because you bring a person into this world without their quote-unquote consent. And now you have raised them, right? And I say consent because you'll have the parent that says, well, I raised you from this age to this age. Now you have to do what I say. No.
Yeah.
That's selfish.
Yeah.
Complete selfishness. You don't have children so they can take care of you.
Totally.
You don't have children so they can meet your own expectations. That's selfishness. You have children because you brought a life into this world. And you placing that responsibility on them, that is not what a parent is. But then, of course, I'll hear well, I want what's best for my kids. Of course, we all do. And if you want what's best for your child, you have to let them be your child.
Yeah.
They are not a direct extension of you. They're allowed to be whatever they're allowed to be. So we can provide the safety, we can provide the love, we can provide the acceptance, we can provide the direction, the boundaries, the structure. But ultimately, they are their own independent person.
Totally.
So that's why I say having a child is the most selfless thing you can do, where you put all this love and energy into this person, right?
Yeah.
To help keep them safe, keep them healthy, educated, whatever it is, and happy. When they can just decide that they're going to, I don't know, do handstands for the rest of their life, or I don't know, whatever, right? Or move to a completely different country.
Be a great influencer.
Yeah.
The handstand professional.
Yeah.
No, it's true. And I think it's interesting. I pull a lot for myself from Hindu philosophy. And there's a term, Chaitanya,
Okay.
which roughly translates to consciousness. And that's really what children are. Is just, it's consciousness. And you can't really put parameters around a consciousness, right? Or like a soul. It's coming preloaded with all this stuff. And it's fascinating. My wife and I recently started falling in love with astrology, which is hilarious. But it's funny.
Well, I'm a Virgo, so.
Okay.
True Virgo.
Okay.
Neurotic and everything.
I'm a Pisces, so, you know.
Oh, you guys. Just kidding.
Meandering and flowing, as you can tell through this conversation. But it's really interesting how it makes you think that there is sort of a astrological world order that sort of governs all of our, like everything. Like, we are literally being hurled through space at 1,000 miles plus an hour in a completely different spot, which is all governed by celestial motions of planets. And yet somehow we are so humanistic that we just think it's all about me, which I just find so crazy.
It is pretty cool. It's pretty wild to look at it that way, right? There was just a tiny spectrum.
Yeah. This is an awesome conversation.
Yeah, I feel the same.
Yeah. What are some parting words of wisdom that you want to share with those that are listening?
I think that this is just what's coming up for me right now. And one of my really, really good friends had said this to me a while back. Faith and fear cannot exist at the same time, which I think is beautiful to really think about.
My dad told me something really similar a couple weeks ago. Your anxiety that you might feel is just an indicative of your incomplete faith in God. Because if you truly trust, you truly do, there's no fear.
Absolutely.
And I was like, whoa, this old man's got some wisdom.
Yeah, absolutely.
For people who want to find out more about you, where can they get more information?
They can go on my website, glendaletherapy.org. Or,
awesome name.
Thank you. My practice is in Glendale, but I do virtual sessions, so licensed all throughout California. Or, if you Google my name, I'm sure it will come up in different places. And I'm also on the Sanctuary Treatment Center website. So.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. This is great.
Amazing.
This is great.
Yeah, welcome to Happy Hour.
Yay.
Thank you so much for joining us for Happy Hour. We hope you walked away having learned something and feeling a little less alone in the journey. If you liked what you heard, it would mean so much to us if you subscribe so you can be notified every time we have a new episode. To learn more about what we are doing at HPY, go to thinkhpy.com. Until next time, we hope you feel heard. Take care.